After opening my eyes, I found out that I had lost my memory. The good news is that I married my goddess from school, Willow. The bad news is that before I lost my memory, I was a simp. I lost my memory after attempting self-harm. I was furious. I slapped myself in front of the mirror. The reason? Because I, George, absolutely hated simps. While I was trying to understand why I would be so pathetic for Willow that I even went as far as to try to make a statement with my life, Makoto, who claimed to be Willow's crush, appeared. I couldn't be bothered to argue with him. I slapped both of them, one on each cheek. Then I filed for divorce with Willow. To my surprise, Willow, looking utterly confused, asked, "Honey, when did that idiot become my crush?" Chapter 1. Chairman Liu, your husband has committed suicide. When I woke up, a blinding white light filled my vision. Before I could even react, a sharp pain shot through my wrist. As I barely caught my breath, a frantic female voice reached my ears. I saw a woman standing with her back to me. On the phone, she said, "Chairman Liu, George is in the hospital now. Would you like to come and see him?" On the other end of the line came a cold and emotionless female voice. "Is he dead? If not, don't bother me." The call ended abruptly. The woman sighed, turned around, and froze when she saw me. After a moment, she approached and asked, "You're awake. Who are you?" I asked, confused, staring blankly at her. "Are you talking to me? Don't you recognize me?" Her expression changed. "I'm Alicia, Chairman Liu's assistant." "Who is Chairman Liu?" I asked. Alicia frowned, her patience visibly thinning. "George, Chairman Liu is very busy right now. Even if you try to commit suicide, it won't change anything, let alone pretend to have amnesia. Give it up. Chairman Liu won't come to see you." I was even more confused, with no idea what she was talking about. Seeing my silence, Alicia stepped closer and said in a persuasive tone, "George, you've been married to Chairman Liu for 5 years. You've been making trouble for 5 years, and she still hasn't fallen in love with you. Maybe it's time to reflect on yourself and stop causing her trouble." Though I still didn't understand what was going on, her tone and words made me uncomfortable. Something about her smug attitude triggered an inexplicable sense of disgust. "Wait, you said 5 years?" I asked. I rushed into the bathroom attached to the hospital room. Staring into the mirror, I saw myself, same face, but more mature, with a faint trace of melancholy I couldn't shake. Could what Alicia said be true? Is it really 5 years later? Am I married? As it turns out, I am married, and I have been for 5 years. I didn't time travel, nor was I dreaming. I had lost my memory. My current memory stopped at age 18. Just when I had started university, I had a crush on a senior named Willow. She was a flawless beauty, appearance, family background, and capability were all impeccable. She skipped grades as a child, and even though she was my senior, she was younger than me by a few years. Now, I'm married to her. According to Alicia, I married Willow at the age of 22, a flash marriage, without much emotional foundation. I was still in college then. We only got a marriage certificate, no wedding. After we married, I discovered that Willow's heart wasn't with me. She seemed closer to her male best friend, Makoto. Apparently, he was the love she couldn't have, and for me, the unloved husband. I started making a mess of our marriage. I tried every bizarre method I could think of to get Willow's attention, only to make her grow more disgusted with me. Her friends treated me as a joke, waiting to see when we'd divorce. Makoto never respected me either. As the young heir of his circle, he saw me as nothing but a clown whenever I acted out in desperation. In the end, I used suicide as leverage to stop Willow from interacting with Makoto, but she refused. She even told me to go ahead and die. And so, I did. That's what happened before I woke up. It all felt so surreal. Committing suicide for love, that's so unlike me. I've always despised simps. There's no way I'd grovel for any woman. Once I figured all this out, I found myself in the master bedroom of our marital home. The doctor said I was fine, so Alicia brought me straight back, leaving me with a parting remark, half warning, half advice, not to make any more trouble. Standing in the massive villa, I no longer had the energy to stir up drama. I was completely stunned by the sheer luxury surrounding me. Even the small walk-in closet was bigger than my old apartment. As I was marveling at the opulence of our shared bedroom, I heard a noise from the doorway. I turned sharply, locking eyes with Willow, her face cold as ice, her demeanor utterly detached. Chapter 2. Even though I knew Willow and I had been married for 5 years, it still felt like the first time I had ever been this close to her face. I had to admit, there was a reason she had been the goddess of my teenage years. Just having her face in front of me lightened my mood significantly. Even with her cold, indifferent expression, I didn't find her particularly unlikable. It seemed Alicia's words weren't entirely baseless. I might really just be a hopeless sucker for a pretty face. Seeing me silent, Willow furrowed her brow slightly and said, "George, what are you up to this time?" As she spoke, she walked gracefully toward the walk-in closet. not even pausing as she passed by me. She casually pulled out a robe. I turned slightly to look at her and said, "Up to what?" I hadn't said a word since she unexpectedly returned, and yet she claimed I was up to something. Willow's dark eyes glanced at me as she said, "You used to throw yourself at me the moment I came home. Now you're switching tactics." I was a bit stunned. Was I really that eager after marrying Willow? But I kept my composure and replied indifferently, "All right, I won't do it again." I thought she'd breathe a sigh of relief. To my surprise, her frown deepened, and she looked at me with even more irritation. "I've been really busy with work lately. I don't have time for your antics," she said, her tone laced with annoyance. I was speechless. Seeing me stay silent, Willow's gaze turned colder. She said, "George, stop trying to pull anything against Makoto. He hasn't done anything wrong. Even if you threaten me with suicide, it won't work." I froze, feeling a mix of emotions. Alicia had already given me the gist of things between Willow and me. The story was simple. I loved Willow. Willow loved Makoto. And I, the clown in this tragic comedy of love, could only keep targeting Makoto out of jealousy, which made Willow loathe me even more. This latest suicide attempt was fueled by my jealousy over Willow's constant care and attention for Makoto. I'd secretly sabotaged Makoto's company, smeared their public figures, and Willow, without hesitation, stepped in to protect him. This was her way of letting everyone in their circle know that, as Willow-Lou's husband, I held no real status. In her heart, I wasn't worth even a fraction of Makoto. So I snapped. I tried to win Willow's heart back with a suicide threat. The outcome was predictable. A woman who was already sick of me wasn't going to have a change of heart because of my desperation. She'd only find me even more troublesome. Willow, seeing me not respond, lost her patience and headed to the bathroom. I let out a breath of relief and collapsed onto the enormous bed, my mind a chaotic mess. Having lost the past few years of memories, I genuinely couldn't understand how I had reached the point of such obsessive behavior. At 18, I had been the last person to fall victim to love brain. Now, here I was, willing to risk everything for a woman. I couldn't believe there would ever be a day when I'd become this. As my thoughts swirled, I hadn't yet figured out my next move when the blanket beside me lifted. A soft, warm body slid into the bed next to mine. The faint fragrance hit me like a jolt of electricity. I turned my head quickly, only to see Willow lying beside me. Her dark eyes, usually icy and detached, now carried an intense, almost oppressive undertone. I stammered awkwardly, "What are you doing?" Even with my memory loss, based on what I already knew, Willow and I were supposed to have a terrible relationship. We might even be sleeping in separate beds, so why was she so naturally lying down beside me? Willow didn't seem to notice my discomfort. Her soft arm wrapped around my waist effortlessly. Without a word, she leaned into me. Her delicate fingers, impossibly skilled, began to tease me in ways I'd never experienced before. Willow, I couldn't help but call her name. "Don't touch me." Chapter 3. It seemed that my visible resistance wasn't just an act, as Willow seemed momentarily stunned, but that expression quickly shifted to one of impatience as she said, "George, stop throwing a tantrum." I didn't like the way she always spoke to me in that tone. Even though her face, one I had secretly admired for years, was still beautiful, I felt a growing distaste. I said, "I'm your husband, right? I've tried to kill myself and ended up in the hospital. You came back and didn't even ask how I was. And now you're accusing me of something. Willow, why are you treating me like this?" My anger seemed to ignite something in her. She grasped my wrist tightly, her voice cold as she said, "Because you brought all this upon yourself." Her grip was light, but it happened to press against the wound I had caused from my wrist cutting. It hurt, but I forced myself to stay silent. Willow suddenly released my hand, as if losing interest, turning away to lie on her side with her back to me. Her tone remained frosty. "This time I'll let it slide. But don't ever try to fake another suicide to threaten me again." I lay there beside her, my mind a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts. The next morning, when I woke up, Willow was already gone. I threw on some clothes and went downstairs, only to find her having breakfast at the table. The butler greeted me. "Good morning, Mr. Wong." I stood there without moving. Willow didn't even look up as she said, "Come eat breakfast." Though it was just breakfast, the spread before me was impressive. I couldn't help but think, of course, this is a rich family. Even breakfast has such grandeur. I sat across from Willow and watched as the butler served me a bowl of sago soup. I was speechless. What man has sago soup for breakfast? I wrinkled my brow as I smelled mango and asked, "Why is there mango in this?" The butler answered, "This is from young Master Ito, especially for you. It's his favorite, airlifted from Europe." I instantly lost my appetite. I said, "I'm not eating." The sound of silver cutlery clinking against porcelain filled the room. Willow raised her gaze and looked at me, her voice still cold. "George, know when to stop." I was fuming. I clenched my teeth and said, "Does it bother you that I'm not eating mangoes?" She replied, "Isn't it because Makoto sent it to me? That's why you're refusing to eat it." Willow's expression grew colder. George, when will you stop being so jealous? Jealous of Makoto? I didn't know what 27-year-old George had been like in front of them. Maybe he was pathetic. Maybe he had been too in love with Willow, letting them walk all over him. But now, I was 18. I didn't love Willow, so there was no need to swallow my pride. Just then, the butler interrupted. Mr. Wong, young Master Ito is here. A gentle voice followed. Willow, am I interrupting you? At the door, a tall figure stepped inside. The butler and maid greeted him familiarly, clearly used to him being around. I only glanced at him and immediately recognized him as Makoto. I noticed the difference in how the butler addressed us. While I, Willow's husband, was called Mr. Wong, Makoto was referred to as young Master Ito. The difference was clear, and I couldn't help but feel the familiar sting of inferiority. No wonder 27-year-old me had been so antagonistic toward Makoto. Despite being her legitimate husband, I couldn't measure up to how she openly favored another man, especially one she had known since childhood. Anyone in my position would feel off balance. Makoto looked at me with a hint of concern and said, Mr. Wong, I heard you tried to cut your wrist. Are you all right? I snorted dismissively, not bothering to hide my disdain. I didn't know how I appeared to them at 27. Maybe I seemed weak and spineless. Or perhaps because I loved Willow so much, I had allowed them to treat me however they wished. But now, I was 18. I didn't love Willow, so I didn't need to bow to them. Makoto seemed a bit embarrassed and said to Willow, Willow, I'm sorry. It seems Mr. Wong doesn't want to see me. Maybe I shouldn't have come. I smiled and said, you knew that, and you still came. I added bluntly, you came to watch me suffer, didn't you? Makoto's face turned red with shame. Willow quickly stepped in, coldly scolding me. George, stop making a scene. She defended Makoto, and my displeasure only deepened. My impression of her dropped even further. When I first woke up, the idea of being married to the girl I had secretly admired for years had made me excited and grateful. But now, it felt like she was nothing special. No matter how beautiful or rich she was, what did it matter? She discarded her husband like an old shoe, acting like she was untouchable. If she was so capable, why marry me in the first place? I was frustrated and upset, but Makoto remained calm and gentlemanly. He said, Willow, I came here to personally invite you to my celebration party. It seemed he had only just realized I was standing there. He hesitated before adding, Mr. Wong, would you like to join us as well? I hadn't wanted to go, but when I saw the barely concealed contempt and challenge in Makoto's eyes, I couldn't help but curl my lips into a smile. Sure, after all, I'm Willow's husband. I should accompany her to these events. Chapter 4. I followed Willow to Makoto's celebration party. When the three of us entered the private room, everyone immediately turned their attention to us, their expressions a mix of surprise and curiosity. Someone asked, why did Willow bring him along? Another person responded, it's not surprising. Her husband causes trouble all the time, and he's hostile to every man around Willow, especially to Makoto. I heard he even tried to commit suicide because of Makoto. Someone else chimed in. Of course, but he should know his place. Marrying Willow was already a stretch for him. What right does he have to control her? Those other men were one thing, but Makoto, who does he think he is to compare with him? Their voices weren't loud, but they were just enough for me to hear. I scanned the room and could tell they were probably Willow's or Makoto's friends. The people in the same circle. You could tell. I sneered inwardly. No wonder 25-year-old me had tried to kill myself. After listening to these degrading remarks every day, how could I not be twisted inside? And I must have been deeply in love with Willow back then, to the point where the daily torture led me to consider ending my life. Willow and Makoto had already seated themselves at the table. While I stood alone, the chatter around me continued. Isn't it embarrassing that he's standing there alone? Someone replied. How could it be embarrassing? As long as he's with Willow, they'd probably let him kneel if she asked. I cast a cold glance at the person who spoke, smiling as I said, she's not dead, so why would I kneel to her? The person's expression shifted, clearly not expecting me to fire back. Willow looked impatient. Enough. Stop causing trouble. She didn't defend me at all. Instead, she just told both sides to stop. I snorted. Seems like I'm not welcome here, so I won't disturb you all. With that, I turned and walked out of the room. Behind me, I could hear gasps and someone muttering, I can't believe he's actually giving Willow attitude. Another person said, could it be that he's really losing it because of Makoto? I bet he won't last half an hour before he comes crawling back. I shook my head, irritated by the noise. I headed to the outdoor pool to clear my mind. It wasn't long before Makoto suddenly came out. He said, Mr. Wong, I have to admit, you've really surprised me. I glanced behind him and noticed he was alone. With a mischievous grin, I said, I hate you so much. Don't you fear me pushing you into the pool right now? Makoto laughed and said, I'd be more afraid if you didn't dare. Considering everyone knows Willow would save me. I pursed my lips, too lazy to engage with him. Makoto moved closer and asked, George, do you want to bet? I found his question strange. I replied, if you two really love each other so much, why don't you just have Willow divorce me? Makoto, is it really love if you have to trample on someone else's feelings to perform your little drama? Makoto's expression shifted slightly. He replied, isn't it because you're so persistent? You've gone so far as to fake suicide just to keep her with you. She only pities you. Then, just as quickly, he returned to his calm, gentle demeanor and asked again, George, do you dare to bet? The pool's surface glistened, seemingly clear but deceptively deep. I shook my head without hesitation. I don't dare. Makoto remained silent. I couldn't swim. Attempting suicide had been a foolish thing to do once, and there was no need for a second round. Just as I stood up, I caught a glimpse of Makoto's disappointed look. He was standing behind me, and without warning, he shoved me. Splash. I hit the water with a loud splash. The sound of screams filled the air as I sank quickly, unable to grasp what was happening. In that moment, I couldn't feel anything. I was overwhelmed by the panic and fear of being submerged in water. My throat started choking on water, and my lungs felt like they were about to implode. I struggled desperately to swim to the surface, but when I looked up, I saw a familiar figure swimming in the opposite direction. My wife, Willow, was swimming toward Makoto as both he and I fell into the water. A sharp pain shot through my heart. This must have been the last shred of emotion left in my 27-year-old self. Even though I had long forgotten the past and no longer loved her, my body's instincts still lingered, but this time, those feelings were drowned. When I woke up, I was lying on the edge of the pool. Both Makoto and I had been rescued, but he had been saved by Willow, while a stranger was the one who pulled me out. She was beautiful, with a figure that turned heads. As I lay there, she was pressing down on my chest, trying to expel the water I had swallowed. I coughed violently, spitting up water. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Willow approaching. Makoto, ever the actor, pretended to admire Willow's back. Willow seemed to remember me for the first time and furrowed her brow, asking, "Are you okay?" I didn't answer. I struggled to get up. The woman beside me tried to help me, but I pushed her away. When Willow reached me, I raised my hand and slapped her across the face before shoving her to the ground. A complete silence fell over the room. I could hear every breath, deliberately slowed down. Willow, the perfect, wealthy, proud woman, no one had ever dared to lay a hand on her before, let alone shove her aside like that. I said, "Willow, let's get a divorce." For a long time, I only heard my own voice echoing in the silence. I don't want anything. Just consider that slap as the divorce settlement you owe me, my ex-wife. Chapter 5. I had anticipated how Willow might react: anger, shock, disappointment, disgust. But no matter what her response was, it no longer mattered to me. The silence around us was terrifyingly oppressive, even more so than before. I could even hear the sound of water dripping from my body to the floor, every drop echoing in the stillness, along with the group of people around us who instinctively slowed their breathing. They seemed stunned. Here I was, someone who had always followed Willow's lead, and I had actually laid hands on her. Not only that, but I'd even suggested a divorce. Willow was silent for a long time, her beautiful face marked with a clear red handprint. She suddenly walked toward me, and I felt disgusted, stepping back. In that instant, her expression darkened even more. It looked worse than when I had pushed her. I said, "I told you, that slap was your divorce settlement." I glared at her. "Willow, you wouldn't be petty enough to not even accept this, would you?" Willow didn't say anything. Her lips pressed tightly together as she grabbed my wrist, trying to drag me away. In the confusion, a slender wrist gripped mine. The person looked at me, then at Willow, but didn't pull me away. Instead, she gave a playful smile and said, "Willow, he almost drowned just now. Can't you let it slide?" It was the woman who had saved me earlier. She was soaked through as well, exuding a different kind of charm. She and Willow were complete opposites. Willow was cold, intelligent, the Ice Queen type, while this woman was wild and alluring, full of life. For a moment, I was dazed. Willow seemed to notice this and her face turned dark in an instant. She tightened her grip on my hand and said, "Anna, he's my husband. What right do you have to advise me?" Anna, still with that rebellious expression, replied, but I could have sworn I heard him say he wanted a divorce. The atmosphere grew excessively cold. Anna, seeing the murderous intent in Willow's eyes, smiled and added, "Regardless, I did just save your husband's life. Shouldn't you thank me?" Willow's expression softened slightly at this, and she replied, "The Western Suburbs Project, I'll entrust it to you." With that, she tugged me away. Behind us, gasps filled the air, everyone clearly shocked. The Western Suburbs Project is a huge deal. Willow's giving it to Anna. That's a multi-billion project. Even the Ito family only got a small share, and she's handing it all to Anna. Is it because she saved Willow's husband? No way. I thought Willow didn't even like that guy. I remained silent. Willow brought me to the hotel room. She was the type to be particular about everything. She refused to stay in a room anyone else had stayed in. So, even at the hotel, they reserved a suite for her on the top floor. She dragged me by the wrist, saying nothing the entire way, and directed me to the bathtub. The warm water enveloped my body, and I couldn't help but say, "Willow, can you leave?" She remained as she always was, cold and distant. Since I had pushed her, she hadn't changed her attitude at all. "No," she said after a long pause, her voice barely audible. Just when I had almost soaked long enough, she suddenly entered the bathroom. I didn't know what she was going to do, and I was startled. The next moment, I felt her weight on me as she tightly embraced me. Willow's arms curled around me like winding vines, squeezing me so tightly I could barely breathe. Her soft chin rested against my head. I struggled, but she held me even tighter. At the moment when my patience was completely worn thin, I heard her voice, pure and restrained, whisper, "George, I'm so glad you're okay." And my voice, cold as ice, replied, "Willow, stop pretending. Anna saved me." What right did she have to say something like that? Chapter 6. I will never forget that moment when, as Makoto and I both fell into the water, I saw Willow rush toward his back. Even though I had lost 5 years of memories and no longer loved her, at that moment, my heart still felt the instinctual sting. It was suffocating, like drowning, a pain that was unbearable. I thought to myself, perhaps that was the last struggle of 27-year-old me. I was glad I had lost my memory. Otherwise, with how deeply I had loved Willow, my heart would have likely shattered in agony. Willow was silent. She opened her mouth, as though wanting to say something, but no words came out. I couldn't swim, and she had saved Makoto. There was no denying that. If it weren't for Anna, I wouldn't be lying here safely now. She spoke after a long silence, her voice low. "This was my fault, George. It won't happen again," I replied, indifferent. "I don't care." I shrugged. "After the divorce, you can save whoever you want. It has nothing to do with me." Willow tightened her grip on me. She said, "I know you're angry, but it's not what you think." She paused before continuing. "As for the divorce, I don't agree." I asked, "Why not?" When Makoto and I both fell into the water, she didn't hesitate to choose to save him. That alone showed that she had placed my life behind someone else's. I couldn't understand why this marriage needed to continue. Moreover, she had chosen him in front of so many people. Did she think I had no dignity? Was my face worth nothing? "Willow, I'm telling you, I will divorce you." She seemed a bit angry, but knowing I had every reason to be furious, she held back and didn't argue. After I stood up from the bathtub and lay on the bed, she continued to cling to me. She said, "Just sleep for now. We'll talk about it tomorrow." I gritted my teeth and said, "Don't come near me, Willow. Don't push me to the point of doing something." Willow sneered, "With your skills, you think you can do anything to me?" I was about to push her away, but my hand accidentally brushed the wrong place. Willow's face immediately flushed with a faint red hue, but it quickly disappeared. She softened and kissed the corner of my mouth. She said, "All right, stop. This was my fault, and I'll make it up to you." My head throbbed, my temples pounding painfully. I didn't know how pitiful 27-year-old me had become. After everything that had happened, she still thought she could soothe me. What did she think of me? I clenched my fist, then ruthlessly pushed her away. Willow's expression darkened, and before I knew it, she was on top of me, looking down at me from above. She said, "Can't sleep? Then let's do something." She was about to kiss my mouth, but my face turned pale in an instant, sweat forming on my forehead. I couldn't help but scream, my body trembling. Willow seemed to snap out of it. She asked, "Did I hurt you?" In that moment, the panic in her eyes made me wonder if she actually cared about me. But I quickly dismissed that illusion. She didn't care about me. If she didn't even care about my life, why would she care about the injury on my wrist? I bit my lip hard, refusing to speak. Willow, growing more anxious, asked, "Where does it hurt? Tell me." Before I could answer, I smelled a faint scent of blood in the air. Willow suddenly stared at my wrist, where a bandage was tightly wrapped. She had always believed I was only pretending, so she never considered that the wound was real. Her face darkened, and she slowly began to unravel the bandage, revealing the blood-soaked fabric. When she saw the gaping wound on my skin, her pupils constricted sharply. She whispered, "George." I looked at her coldly, enduring the intense pain as I yanked my hand back. I asked, "Do you see it? Is that enough for you?" She asked, "You're serious about this?" Her eyes suddenly stormed with a tempest of emotions. She shouted, "Who told you to try to kill yourself?" I stared at her intently and replied, "You still care about me trying to kill myself? You were there, watching me nearly drown." My words struck her like a needle. I saw her black eyes narrow slightly, as if she was trying to avoid facing the truth. But soon, her voice grew hoarse as she said, "I'll have a doctor come check on you." With the doctor came Makoto. He had changed into a fresh outfit, his hair slicked back neatly, Looking every bit like a charming, flirtatious playboy, he nervously stood by the door and asked, "Willow, is he all right?" Willow nodded, her gaze dark as she spoke to him. "You should go rest. This doesn't concern you." Makoto sighed, appearing gentle and well-mannered. "I feel guilty. You almost drowned Wang because of me." Before he could finish, I interrupted him coldly. "You're quite the actor, aren't you?" Makoto's expression changed immediately. I continued, "Too bad there's no security footage by the pool. Or if Willow had heard what you said to me back then, I wonder how she would have looked at you." Chapter 7. In the end, Makoto quickly left. He had probably gained many advantages from Willow before with his words of sowing discord, but now, I was no longer playing along with him. No matter what he said, I responded straightforwardly, and he couldn't keep up. He didn't understand why I had suddenly changed so much. He knew that staying any longer would expose his act, so he left without hesitation. I felt relieved. I didn't want to see the two of them together anyway. Willow shot me a long, heavy glance before saying, "Rest here. I'll come see you tomorrow." I nodded and replied, "You better bring the divorce papers. If you won't write them, I'll get a lawyer to do it." Her wealth was likely staggering, and if she drafted the agreement, there would be no complications. It would also prevent her from thinking I was after her money. Willow's gaze darkened slightly, and she finally said, "I won't divorce you." With that, she left, closing the door behind her. It seemed she understood that staying here would only irritate me further. Not long after, Willow contacted me through her phone and told me to wait for her tomorrow. I looked at my phone. At first, I used my own birthday as the password, but I couldn't unlock it. Then, I tried Willow's birthday, and it opened immediately. I sneered at myself, mocking my past simp behavior, then quickly changed the password back to my own birthday. The next day, I didn't wait for her. I immediately contacted Anna. I said, "This is George." I introduced myself right away and asked, "Do you have time for a drink? What's up?" Anna's voice sounded slightly hoarse, but there was a hint of a smile in it. I replied, "I wanted to thank you. After all, you saved my life yesterday." I was just the type of person who was clear about love and hate. I had no idea what had happened to me at 27. To be this humbled by love, she replied. "Sure." We met at a cafe nearby, and when I arrived, Anna was already there. I said, "You're punctual." I sat down and asked, "So, how should I thank you?" She replied, "Anything works." Anna looked at me, then suddenly frowned. "Why do you seem different from before?" I said. "Really?" I touched my hair. I didn't want anyone to know that I had lost my memory. Moreover, I wasn't even sure of my relationship with Anna. From what had happened yesterday, it seemed like we weren't close at all. I forced a smile and asked, "How do I seem different?" "Maybe it's just the shock from yesterday." "George, what's going on with you?" Anna frowned, suddenly becoming serious. "We've known each other for so many years. If something's wrong, you can tell me." I paused for a second before asking, "We've known each other for many years. I don't remember a thing." Anna tapped the table and said, "Don't tell me you've forgotten me." I smirked and replied, "Should I remember you?" Her eyes scrutinized me, and it felt as though she could see straight through me. "George, something's off. Ever since you woke up after that suicide attempt, you've been different. Is it because of Willow?" I laughed sarcastically and said, "Even you can see I'm different, but she can't. This marriage really doesn't need to continue." Anna looked as though she had heard something unbelievable. She asked, "You really plan to divorce her?" I asked, "Are you surprised?" I took a sip of my coffee and continued, "Given what happened yesterday, don't you think divorce is the only option?" She shook her head and said, "The old you was so obsessed with her. I never thought you'd actually go through with a divorce." She smiled faintly, teasing, "When you married Willow, you were madly in love. Wherever she went, you were right there, and you couldn't stand any men around her, especially Makoto." I asked, "Was I that crazy?" She replied, "Even more than that. You were extremely possessive and incredibly humble, afraid she might leave you. But, speaking of which, she always acted like she didn't care about you, yet she never actually thought about leaving you." She sighed and said, "After you married her, you cut off contact with all your old friends, especially the women. We were still college classmates, and we had been through so much. Even though I confessed to you and was rejected, I still valued our friendship. But you didn't even want to stay in touch. I only managed to get into Willow's circle after graduation, just so I could see you from time to time, but you acted like you didn't know me." She said so much, and it made everything about our relationship clearer to me. So, it was like that. She was a classmate I met after I turned 18. No wonder I didn't remember her. I had met Anna after turning 18. She confessed her feelings to me, and I turned her down. Then I met Willow, and we had a whirlwind marriage. After marrying Willow, I became like a shell of a man, laughed at by everyone, with no dignity left. I loved her in such a self-deprecating way, even severing all ties with my old friends. Anna had no choice but to infiltrate Willow's circle just to speak with me. I said, "So, You know me pretty well. My eyes lit up. I had lost my memory, and I was still unclear about my current situation. I didn't even know what my job was at this point. With her around, it seemed like things would be a lot easier. I didn't want Willow to know about my memory loss, though. If she found out, things would get complicated. Chapter 8. Time passed quickly, though I never explicitly mentioned it. Anna seemed to sense that I was in trouble. She didn't dig into the details, instead just casually mentioning my situation over the past 2 years. I more or less understood what had happened and couldn't help but feel a bit emotional. At 27, I had truly loved someone to the point of losing myself. This was something the 18-year-old me could never have imagined. Suddenly, I found myself with an extra 9 years of life, and now I had become the kind of simp I used to despise. I couldn't accept it. As Anna and I chatted and laughed, a familiar voice suddenly interrupted from nearby. "Isn't that George? Why is he with Anna?" Then the person seemed to realize something and added, "It must be because Anna saved him yesterday, so he's thanking her." I'm sure George isn't the type to casually meet women like this. I turned around and saw Willow standing in front of us, with Makoto beside her, though I didn't know when they had arrived. Willow glanced at me coldly and said, "I remember telling you before, I don't like you hanging out with her." I furrowed my brows and retorted, "We're getting a divorce. What's it to you?" I couldn't believe that, because Willow didn't like it. I had completely cut off all contact with my friends. It was one thing to maintain a respectful distance, but why should I have no female friends at all? Willow's face remained expressionless as she turned to Anna and said, "You saved my husband yesterday, and I've already shown my gratitude through the project in the western suburbs. There's no need for you two to meet privately." Anna smiled faintly, her expression somewhat challenging. "Yesterday, you were thanking me as his wife, but today, I'm accepting his thanks as his friend. Please don't confuse the two." The atmosphere instantly became tense. I didn't want to watch them bicker, so I grabbed my coat and stood up. "Anna, let's go somewhere else." Willow immediately grabbed my arm, her eyes icy as she asked, "Where do you think you're going?" I snapped back, "None of your business." I glanced at Makoto behind her and added, "Why don't you go be with your friend? Hurry up and send the divorce papers over, or he'll always be the hidden third wheel." Willow opened her mouth, seemingly about to say something, but I didn't want to hear it. I yanked my arm free and walked off with Anna. I didn't return home until evening. This unfamiliar world still felt strange to me. I had to find a place to stay within the next few days, or after the divorce, I wouldn't even know where to go. Willow walked over when she saw me enter, her eyes cold. "So, you do know how to come back?" Her questioning tone irritated me. I frowned and said, "Can you stop staring at me? I was just out with a friend. What's it got to do with you?" As soon as the words left my mouth, a sharp pain shot through my temples. Fuzzy fragments of memory flashed in my mind, and I stepped back, gripping the armrest of the couch tightly. Hadn't I said something like this before? I suddenly looked up at her, my eyes bloodshot. I remembered. There was a vivid memory of Willow saying those exact words to me. She had gone out for some social event and returned late. When I asked her about it, she would use this impatient tone to brush me off. And now, those words, I had just returned them to her. Willow seemed to recall something, and she pursed her lips, falling silent. It wasn't until much later that she explained, "The meeting with Makoto wasn't what you think. Our families have been friends for years, and some things are unavoidable, but I've been reducing the chances of meeting him." I interrupted her. "You don't need to explain," I said. "If you feel guilty because you didn't save me when I was drowning, and now you don't want a divorce to make up for it, there's really no need for that." I shook my head and added, "You'd be better off giving me more compensation when we get divorced." Chapter 9. After that day, Willow and I once again parted ways on bad terms. I just couldn't understand why she didn't want a divorce. She clearly loved Makoto, and she disliked me, so wouldn't divorce be exactly what she wanted? I couldn't quite figure out her thoughts, but honestly, I didn't feel like trying anymore. The next day, I decided to pack up and move out. When Willow found out I had moved, she immediately called me. "George, what do you mean by this?" I replied. "What do you mean? We're getting a divorce. We can't just keep living together, can we? Write up the agreement as soon as possible." Before I could say anything else, she hung up the phone. I tossed my phone onto the table, too lazy to deal with it. Just as I finished packing up my things, there was a knock on the door. I thought it was a delivery, so I opened the door, only to see Willow standing there, her anger barely contained. My expression changed instantly. I asked, "What are you doing here?" "Wait, how did you even know I was here?" Willow walked straight in, glancing around at the simple decor of the rental place. She sneered, "You'd rather live in a dump like this than make up with me and come home." I took a deep breath. "Willow, I'm not throwing a tantrum. I really want a divorce." At this point, I was starting to feel confused too. I asked, "Why don't you want a divorce?" I looked at her in bewilderment. "Isn't this what you've been wanting?" She snapped, "When have I ever wanted a divorce?" Willow's eyes bore into me as if I were some kind of irrational person. She asked, "Are you still mad about Makoto?" Her gaze grew heavy as she continued, "I thought you understood. I didn't mean to leave you like that." Seeing me stand there stiffly, refusing to respond, she sighed. She grabbed my shoulder and gently pushed me toward the sofa. "George, stop being childish. Come home with me. Things like this won't happen again." After everything that had happened, now she wanted to resolve it. Wasn't it a little too late for that? I pushed her hand off me. "No need. Just get the divorce papers ready." Suddenly, Willow cupped my face in her hands. "George, do you have to make a scene like this?" I said, frustrated. "I told you, I'm not throwing a tantrum." She asked, "Are you really going to sleep in a place like this alone?" I replied, "Why not?" Then, unexpectedly, Willow bit my earlobe, teasingly saying, "Darling, come home with me. You won't be able to sleep here alone." I found it almost laughable. Maybe for a little princess like you, this place seems too simple, but for me, it's perfectly fine, and it's close to my workplace. Willow sighed. "Do I have to spell it out for you? George, without me, you won't be able to sleep alone." I stared at her wide-eyed, as if hearing something terrifying. "Without you, I can't sleep." Ever since I woke up with amnesia, I felt like Willow and I should be two people stuck in a cycle of resentment. I loved her, but she despised me. Yet now, with the tone she was using, it felt like we were a loving couple who just fought a lot. Before she could say anything else, I grabbed her and pushed her toward the door. I said, "Willow, I've made up my mind. I'm divorcing you. I can't live this kind of life for another day." Once I shoved Willow out of the door, I turned to focus on arranging my new place. I had already gotten a good grasp of things at the company. It was getting a bit overwhelming, so I needed to spend more time on it. That evening, I decided to order takeout and casually scroll through my social media. I came across a photo posted by Makoto. It was a photo of him and Willow, though it was subtle, with only Willow's profile visible. But that profile was so beautiful that even just a half shadow of her face could immediately be recognized. Makoto also posted a cryptic message. "If we hadn't missed each other, wouldn't I be the man by your side? But luckily, it's not too late. We still have time to correct everything." I sneered. Wasn't this a subtle hint that Willow and I were together without love, and that we'd eventually divorce, only for her to end up with him? I liked the post and commented 99, then deleted it and unfriended him. I also found Willow's contact information and deleted and blocked everything. The next day, when I arrived at the office, Willow was already waiting for me downstairs with a cold expression. As soon as she saw me, she stormed up and asked, "Did you block me?" I said, "Sorry." I admitted it directly. "I shouldn't have blocked you." Her expression softened a bit, and I added, "Forget it. We haven't divorced yet, right? You came to find me to sign the papers, didn't you? I'm about to take a leave. Once we sign, we can head straight to the Civil Affairs office to get the divorce certificate." Willow's face darkened immediately. "George, unblock me," I replied. "I won't." Her tone suddenly softened as she said, "Honey, I apologize. Please unblock me." I rolled my eyes. "I don't even know your number." As soon as I said that, Willow's face shifted. She asked, "You don't remember my number?" I answered, "Yeah, so what?" She gripped my shoulder tightly, seemingly realizing something was off. She asked, "How could you forget my number? You used to know it by heart." Shit. My heart skipped a beat as she noticed. I quickly looked away and said, "I just forgot." "So what? We're getting a divorce. Is it wrong for me to forget your number?" "George, what's wrong with you?" Willow stared at me intently. "Ever since you woke up from your suicide attempt, it's like you've become a completely different person." Chapter 10. I was afraid she might notice something, so I pulled my arm away from her grip. I said, "Isn't this normal? After going through such a major event, it's inevitable that I'd change a little. Are you really expecting me to be the same as before? Like some clingy puppy, always humble, always without self-respect?" Willow looked at me, a dangerous glint flashing in her eyes. She ignored my half-hearted words, snatched my phone from my hand, and tried to unlock it, but the password was wrong. She frowned and said, "Did you change your password?" I replied, "Yeah, what's the problem?" She said, "Your old password was my birthday." Willow stared at me coldly, but I could see a flash of hurt in her eyes. I really didn't want to get into this with her. "Willow, give me my phone back. I still need to ask for leave," she said. "If you want, I could buy the entire company for you. Is it really necessary to work here?" She then tried several times to enter the password, muttering our wedding anniversary. She tried again. The password was still wrong. She bit her lip and entered my birthday, which was the correct one. She looked at me silently for a moment before changing the password to our wedding anniversary. I grabbed the phone, trying to unlock it, but no matter what I did, it wouldn't open. Frustrated, I said, "Willow, what gives you the right to change my password?" She said, "The password is our wedding anniversary. You can change it back if you want." I froze. How could I even remember our wedding anniversary? I had amnesia. My understanding of her was limited to a distant crush from years ago. Now, knowing her true nature, her pretty face, fiery body, and wealthy family didn't move me at all. There was no way I would ever want to understand all those details anymore. She said, "You forgot, didn't you?" Her eyes were sharp, like a hawk's, as though trying to see right through me. She tightened her grip on my shoulder and said, "You have amnesia." She spoke those words with complete certainty. I really did have amnesia. Willow realized this, and suddenly, the divorce process slowed down. Since Willow knew about my amnesia, it gave her even more reasons not to want to divorce me. She said, "You just don't remember. It doesn't mean you don't love me anymore." Those were her exact words. "George, once you remember, you won't want to divorce me." Her words filled me with disgust. I was also afraid that if I did regain my memory, I'd end up being the same weak George the First was at 27. That version of me was pathetic. So, I'd rather never remember. When I returned home from work and opened the door, I was about to drop my bag onto the sofa when I saw a shadow sitting there. The figure suddenly looked up at me. "George." She called my name. I jumped in surprise. "When did you get here?" "Wait, how do you have a key to my rental?" Willow answered. "I contacted the landlord. I was getting impatient." "Give me the key. I'll change the locks tomorrow." She said nothing, just looked at me with a complex expression in her eyes. She asked, "How much have you forgotten?" "I haven't forgotten," I replied, annoyed. "The reason I want a divorce is because I don't love you anymore." "How many times do I have to say it?" Before I could finish, Willow suddenly grabbed my arm and wrapped herself around my waist. She held onto me tightly, her face buried in my side. It was a somewhat intimate pose, but Willow seemed to have no other intentions. She just wanted to be close to me. She whispered, "Don't say that. You have amnesia. I won't hold it against you." Her voice was hoarse as she continued, "Once you remember, I'll deal with you then." I was getting frustrated, my emotions on the verge of annoyance. "Willow, is this ever going to end? You don't love me. You've never treated me well. Why should I stay with you? Even if I have amnesia. So what? I hate following you around, being a shell of myself. I like who I am now. I don't love you. Do you understand? I've wanted to leave you for a long time. I've wanted to leave her for a long time." Realizing this, Willow hugged me even tighter. She said, "No, we're just arguing." "George, I've already explained it to you that time. I didn't mean to leave you behind." She cupped my face with both hands and said, "I didn't want to explain it to you because I knew we were the most understanding of each other. Even though I was saving Makoto that time, you should have known that it was a misunderstanding." She rubbed her forehead against mine and sighed softly. "Now that you have amnesia and don't remember me, I think I need to explain myself clearly. With Makoto, it's not what you think. The Liu family and the Ito family have been family friends for generations. His grandfather once did a favor for my grandfather. We were betrothed as children, but I've never had romantic feelings for him. After marrying you, my grandfather felt indebted to him, so he asked me to take care of him. That's all. There's nothing else." I sneered. "Who would believe that? You treat his life as more important than mine." Willow poked my cheek and sighed. "Looks like you're still upset about that." "I'm sorry. I didn't know you had amnesia. I should have explained it to you right away." Chapter 11. I really didn't want to listen to her explanations, but Willow insisted. She hugged me tightly, and I couldn't move. The only thing I could do was listen to her. That day, when I heard someone had fallen into the water, my first thought was to see if you were okay. They told me it was Makoto who had fallen, so I breathed a sigh of relief. But he's like a grandson to my grandfather, so I rescued him. "I didn't expect you to fall in as well." It was just a few simple sentences, but she managed to shift all the responsibility onto something else. She saw the disbelief in my expression and fell silent for a long time before saying, "You don't believe me, do you?" "Why should I believe you?" I looked at her coldly and said, "Everyone saw it." Without even thinking, "You rushed over to save him. You didn't care about me. After Anna saved me, you were so indifferent to me." "Willow, I'm not blind. I can feel your disdain for me." Willow, feeling wronged, hugged me gently this time. She didn't grip me tightly like before. Her embrace was soft, tender in a way that felt almost surreal. This was the first time she had shown weakness in front of me. She said, "George, it wasn't that I was cold to you. It was because you almost died, and I was angry." Willow's voice lowered. "If you hadn't been okay, I would have wanted to kill someone." I shook my head and said, "Willow, if you really cared about me, just divorce me. Let me go. Set me free." She refused. "Except for this one thing. This one thing can't happen." Willow still wouldn't let go. She whispered in my ear, "Wait until you remember. Then we can talk about the divorce." I asked, "Do you think that once I remember, I won't divorce you?" I frowned. Looking at her, Willow didn't answer, but it was clear that she believed that. I sneered, "It's useless. Willow, if heaven made me forget this, then I shouldn't remember. Maybe this is the opportunity it's giving me, to leave you." I was deeply resistant to remembering, unwilling to return to the weak version of myself at 27. Willow had no choice but to keep me calm for now. I lived a normal life for a few days, but then, unexpectedly, Makoto found me. "George, let's talk." This time, Makoto looked haggard and a bit disheveled, with deep dark circles under his eyes. He was standing downstairs from my office. "I didn't want to cause a scene in front of everyone," I said. "If you have something to say, hurry up." Makoto suddenly let out a sarcastic laugh. "You must be feeling pretty smug." "Ah." Willow unilaterally ended the partnership with the Ito family. Now everyone knows the Ito family has lost its backing. I furrowed my brow, slightly surprised, but I kept my tone flat and said, "What does that have to do with me? You should talk to her." Makoto gritted his teeth. "But she said she wouldn't help me. Did you say something to her?" I was getting impatient. "I thought you were here to sincerely apologize, but it seems like you're just looking out for your own interests. We have nothing more to discuss." I turned to leave, but Makoto suddenly yelled sharply from behind. "George, what gives you the right to be her husband? Why can you marry her? What makes you so much better than me?" My steps froze. A sharp ringing in my ears made it hard to think. I felt like I had heard these words before. Not long after Willow and I got married, her high society friends laughed at me. At that time, Makoto had been somewhat friendly, even understanding. He gave me a lot of advice, but his advice had often caused me to embarrass myself in front of others. I began to feel insecure and timid, walking on eggshells. I also became paranoid, fearing that Willow might abandon me. Those images flashed in my mind again. I was sure they were memories, just not fully restored yet, so I could only see fragments. Makoto chased after me. He said, "George, I'll apologize to you, but you have to tell Willow. Get away." I shoved his hand off me and glared at him. "I have no interest in what happened between you and Willow. Please tell her. I never want to see either of you again. The farther away you two are from me, the better." I was about to leave when I collided with a familiar figure. The woman said, "Why does this scene always end up happening when we're around? Willow, don't you think so?" It was Anna's voice. Before I could react, I was pulled aside by someone else. When I realized what was happening, Willow was already by my side. The woman gave a cold look at Anna standing next to me and said, "Stay away from him." Anna shrugged helplessly. "I didn't do anything to him. Why are you so nervous?" She then smiled and looked at Makoto, who had a dark expression. She said, "Why do you always cause trouble for George behind the scenes?" Makoto gritted his teeth. "He's the one who's been causing trouble for me." Makoto's face was cold, but when he saw Willow, his expression softened a little. He said, "Willow, no matter what, we're childhood friends. What happened before was just a misunderstanding. Can't you look past it?" Chapter 12. Willow answered coldly, "I've done what I needed to do, and I don't owe you anything. I only helped you before because of your grandfather. But that doesn't mean you can keep being greedy." Makoto asked. "Greedy?" His face darkened even further, and he couldn't come up with anything to counter her. Clenching his fists, he shot me a resentful glare before turning and leaving. It wasn't until after he left that I understood why he couldn't hold back today and came to find me. Willow had gone public with the incident at the pool that day. She told everyone that it was never a choice between me and Makoto. She would have only saved me. At the time, she didn't know I had fallen in, so she rescued Makoto. If she had known I was in the water too, there wouldn't have been any question. She would have only saved me. Her words were straightforward, almost entirely negating Makoto's importance to her, let alone being more important than me. Before this, I had been mocked by people in the social circle. They laughed at me because my wife didn't value her own life. Everyone was watching, waiting to see when I would be abandoned. But I hadn't expected such a big turnaround. What those people saw was Willow's attitude. With her saying this, it was as if she were backing me up in front of everyone, undermining Makoto. No wonder Makoto was so shaken and rushed to find me. It seemed that not only were his interests hurt, but his carefully maintained image had also crumbled. But I couldn't understand. If Willow didn't have any extra feelings for him, why had I always treated Makoto as a rival in my mind over all these years? Fragments of those memories resurfaced, and I felt a dull headache, unable to help but shake my head. Willow noticed and a hint of concern flashed in her eyes. She immediately supported me and said, "Are you feeling unwell? Let me take you to the hospital." "I'm not going," I said, shrugging her hand off. "Just keep Makoto from coming to trouble me again. That's all I need from you. Nothing else," she replied. "Don't worry, I won't give him that chance again." Willow's voice grew serious. "I won't make that mistake again." Anna, still standing nearby, suddenly chimed in. "You can choose not to make the same mistake, but not all mistakes can be forgiven." I thought she was right, and I nodded in agreement. Willow shot her a cold look and said, "The project in the west suburbs has already been given to you as a thank you for saving him. Don't get greedy." Anna smiled. "After all, I saved him. I'm his savior. He can't swim. If I hadn't stepped in that day, you wouldn't have your husband now. What's with your attitude toward the person who saved his life?" Willow's eyes turned sharp, a glint of coldness flashing. How do you know he can't swim? Anna's expression shifted slightly. Showing a mischievous smile, she asked, what do you think? Then, she sighed. Since you two are getting a divorce, I won't keep it a secret anymore. I've known him for a long time. I even confessed to him, but later, he liked you. She clicked her tongue, glancing at me. George, if you think you made a mistake choosing her, I can still give you a chance to choose again. Before I could react, Willow rushed up. They started fighting, clashing fiercely. I had never seen Willow, usually so cold and detached, show such a burst of emotion. But then again, I'd never seen women fight like this, so I just let them. I wasn't interested in breaking up their fight. How childish. I shook my head and left for the company. What I didn't expect was for Willow to be faster than me. By the time I reached the company building, she was already standing there. A bruise was visible on her face. When she saw me, her eyes brightened. She said, I'll pick you up after work. I stared at the injury on her face. Willow avoided my gaze uneasily and said, don't worry, I'm fine. She's the one who's hurt more. I sneered. Who told you I was worried about you? Don't flatter yourself. Willow's expression darkened, but she still said, I'll pick you up after work. I was getting impatient. I told you, I want a divorce. What part of that do you not understand? Willow's face suddenly showed some hurt, and she spoke in a lower voice. George, you've lost your memory, so you don't remember how you felt about me. When you remember, you'll understand, I replied. Why should I remember? Just because you and Makoto have nothing going on, but the hurt from the past is real, and my decision to divorce you hasn't changed. Or do you think that if I remember, I'll become that weak and humble person again? That if you snap your fingers, I'll forgive you? She said. I didn't think that. Willow's voice was hoarse. Seeing her like this, I suddenly felt a sense of helplessness. I looked deeply into her eyes and said, Willow, when I first woke up and lost all my memories, I was scared. When I found out you were my wife, I was happy, because I already knew you, and I thought you were a good person. Chapter 13. Willow, I've always had a dream about marriage, thinking I would marry a kind woman, but I never imagined that my future wife would turn out to be someone like this. I'm disappointed in you, and I'm disappointed in myself. I've always looked down on the simp in relationships, but under the guise of love, I let you hurt me and turn me into someone who doesn't even resemble myself. Since I woke up from my memory loss, I've never felt any love from you. It's all been indifference and impatience. Even if you and Makoto are innocent, so what? You haven't fulfilled your duty as a wife. You let him hurt me, and you've hurt me too. I don't see any reason for this marriage to continue. Let's get a divorce. I said all this in one long breath. Every word came from my heart. At that moment, I almost felt like I saw a certain light in Willow's eyes shatter. I turned around and didn't look back. After that day, I refused to hear any more news about Willow. People in the circle always tried to climb higher by stepping on others. And after hearing about what had happened last time, they started reaching out to me. Some tried to curry favor, but I didn't respond. I just focused on my own work, waiting for the day Willow would finally agree to the divorce. By the time it was time to get off work, I stretched lazily. I had planned to ask Anna out for a meal to formally thank her, but as I stepped out of the company building, I saw a black luxury car parked there. My colleagues nearby whispered and exchanged knowing looks. I couldn't show my displeasure, so I forced a smile as I walked toward the car, where Willow was leaning against the door. Her figure was striking, and her face was one that always attracted attention. I cursed inwardly but kept my gaze straight and walked past her. Willow immediately approached me. George. She called my name with an unprecedented gentleness. I frowned, not having much patience for her. I asked, are you here to deliver the divorce papers? Her smile faltered for a moment but quickly returned to normal. She deliberately avoided the topic and pulled out a car key from somewhere. George, do you like it? A chorus of gasps rose around us. These were my colleagues, people I'd known for a long time. Because of my memory loss, I had kept my distance from them lately. I didn't expect Willow to make such a tacky gesture. I instinctively replied, I don't like off-road vehicles. Though I said that, when I saw the car key, my heart skipped a beat. I really did like off-road vehicles. It surprised me because at 18, I didn't like off-road vehicles at all. I was into sports cars. More and more people gathered around, making me feel uncomfortable. I asked Willow to leave quickly, but she didn't move, so I had no choice but to grab her and say, let's talk privately. She led me to the car. By the time I realized it, we were already sitting at a restaurant. Come eat with me, Willow said, looking at me with a touch of melancholy. I frowned and asked, after this meal, will you agree to divorce me? Willow didn't answer. She was silent for a long time before finally saying, if you don't eat with me, I won't divorce you. All right, you said it. I picked up my knife and fork. The table was set so carefully. There was red wine, candles, and an array of flowers in a romantic Western style. The food wasn't much, but it looked beautiful. I finished eating quickly and wiped my mouth. I'm full. I'll leave now. As I stood up, Willow looked at me. Her expression hurt. George, did you forget what day it is? What day? I paused, confused. Willow tightened her grip on the knife and fork in her hands. Her voice tinged with sadness. Today is our wedding anniversary. Anniversary? I searched my memory but couldn't recall anything. I couldn't remember how we had celebrated it in the past. Seeing the melancholy in her eyes, I held back the urge to mock her and said flatly, "That's fine. Let's treat this as our last dinner." She didn't say anything, and her eyes cast a shadow beneath them. From where I sat, her already delicate features seemed even more striking. I understood she was trying to salvage our relationship, but I really didn't think there was any need to save it. I muttered, "Sorry, I'm going to the bathroom." Then I turned and left. In the bathroom, there was a large mirror. I turned on the faucet, and the cold water helped calm my nerves. Looking at myself in the mirror, I told myself not to look back. I slapped my face to wake myself up, and as I turned to leave, I suddenly saw Willow walking toward me. Her eyes were deep, filled with an emotion I couldn't quite decipher. "George, please try to remember." Before I could react, my back hit the wall behind me. She kissed me, her arms wrapping around my waist, clinging to me like a vine. Chapter 14. She kissed me, her tone gentle, but her actions were desperate. "Willow, stop this madness." I don't know how much time passed, but I could feel her sweet scent lingering on me, yet all I wanted was to push her away. "Willow, it's pointless." I knew she was so persistent only because I had lost my memory. She thought that as long as I remembered, I would never want to divorce her. "But it's useless," I said. "I know myself very well. Even if I don't love you anymore because of my memory loss, I can still feel that even if I do remember, I would still divorce you." The moment I finished speaking, I saw a look of panic in Willow's eyes. I had never seen her like this. She gripped my hand tightly, intertwining our fingers, squeezing me so hard that it started to hurt. She said, "No, George, you love me. We love each other. You just forgot. Love each other." I found it a bit amusing. I suddenly stepped back, but my head hit the wall behind me. A sharp pain shot through me, and my face went pale from the intensity of the ache. Willow rushed to me, frantic. "George, what's wrong? Are you okay?" I gritted my teeth against the pain and pushed her away, saying, "I'm fine. Just don't touch me." Willow could only stand by, softly holding me. She didn't want to confine me, but she also couldn't bring herself to let go. Her breath was close to mine, and she kissed me fervently. I felt weak all over, unable to resist her relentless assault. But in that moment, the pain at the back of my head made the fragmented memories flash before my eyes. My body felt heavy, unsteady. Willow held my head carefully and kissed me even more intimately. And under those circumstances, the fragmented pieces of my memories became more coherent, until they turned into clear recollections. I remembered our first time, how we got together, how we got married. I even remembered how Makoto and the others mocked me, embarrassing myself in front of her parents, being ridiculed in front of Willow's friends. I remembered how we fought because of Makoto. So that's how it was. A dull pain gripped my heart as all the past pain stood before me. Even my amnesia couldn't shield me from the torment. Our first time together was so cliché. At a party, she was drunk, and I had drunk a bit too much as well. She looked into my eyes, and in her drunken state, asked me to escort her to her room. I didn't know who started it, but when I came to my senses, she was already lying in my arms. I was so nervous, I couldn't breathe. Willow was also a virgin, and the way she clutched the bed sheet was full of panic. But in the blink of an eye, she became that cold, untouchable beauty again. The next morning, Willow saw me, but didn't react much. She simply said, "Let's date." I had secretly admired her for years, so of course, I agreed. We soon became a normal couple, deeply in love with each other. But both of us had intense possessiveness. She told me she didn't want me getting too close to my female friends, and I didn't want her to have anything special with other men. We were loyal to each other, but I never expected Makoto's appearance would disrupt this balance. She said he was someone her grandfather treated like a grandson, and she couldn't be too cold to him. Her reasoning made sense, but I couldn't accept it. Ever since I married her, I had felt inferior to my own identity. She came from a wealthy family, and I was just an ordinary man. The only thing that connected us was that I had gotten into a prestigious school, which gave me the chance to meet her. Otherwise, with my status, I might never have encountered someone like her. Makoto, on the other hand, came from the same upper-class background. Even though Willow told me her family had fallen on hard times and she had to help them, his status still loomed large. Even if they had fallen from grace, what did it matter? He was still the wealthy young man I once envied. These differences made me lose sight of who I was. I became unreasonable, checking her phone, restricting her from associating with any men, even her colleagues and subordinates. I knew they were innocent, but by then, my emotions had spiraled out of control, and I couldn't control myself. All those sweet memories vanished, leaving only our constant arguments and the mocking moments when I couldn't fit into her world. I remember the last argument we had. She told me she didn't want children. I confronted her. What if you get pregnant? If we had a child, could she still disregard Makoto? Willow looked at me with extreme disappointment in her eyes and said, "Do you think a child is just a tool for you to solidify your identity? Then I'd rather never get pregnant. Even if I did, I'd have an abortion." Her cold words shattered me completely. At that time, everyone in our circle was talking about how even if the Ito family went bankrupt, Willow would still help them. I begged her not to go, but she still did. The double blow was unbearable, and I threatened her that if she went, I would kill myself. I had threatened suicide many times when I was emotionally unstable, but none of those times were genuine. Willow tolerated me once or twice, but by the third time, she stopped taking it seriously and simply walked away. Later, I tried to commit suicide and was saved, but when I woke up, I had lost my memory. As I recalled all of this, my heart ached so much that it felt numb. Chapter 15. No wonder I wanted to forget. No wonder I couldn't remember anything. It turns out that those memories were just too painful. My body trembled, and Willow quickly noticed something was wrong. "What's the matter, George?" I said. "Willow, you disgust me." I looked into her eyes, clutching my chest, and suddenly let out a sigh. Actually, I disgusted myself, too. I closed my eyes and passed out. When I woke up again, I was in the hospital. It was the same familiar doctor, checking on me. Willow was anxiously holding my hand, and when she saw me wake up, she immediately called the doctor over. "Sophia, he's awake." Sophia opened my eyes, checked them, and said, "It's nothing serious, just a little stress. There was a bruise in his head before, but now that it's healed, it's nothing. He needs to rest." Willow breathed a sigh of relief and asked, "When did you hit your head? Why didn't you tell me?" I pulled my hand away coldly, my gaze colder than after my memory loss. Willow seemed to sense something, her lips pressing into a thin line. "George, you..." She tried to ask me, but I interrupted her directly, saying, "It's useless. Willow, let's get a divorce." Willow's voice was bitter. "I told you. You don't remember now." I replied, "I remember." I looked into her eyes and said, "I remember everything, but I still want a divorce." Willow's eyes trembled violently, as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. I had never seen her so sad, but I knew, deep down, that my decision was right. I closed my eyes and said, "Being with you is too painful. Willow, let's get a divorce." The word divorce had escaped my lips countless times. Each time Willow reacted strongly, but never like this, only an overwhelming silence, full of despair. Sophia, standing nearby, seemed unable to watch anymore. She spoke to me. "George, don't be too harsh. Willow has already apologized to you." Before she could finish, Willow interrupted her. "It's my fault." I gave Willow a look and said, "When I first woke up, she warned me the same way. All your friends warned me, telling me not to be ungrateful." I paused for a moment, my tone softening. "Willow, do you still think we shouldn't get a divorce?" That day, after I left the hospital, I didn't see Willow for a long time. I had already made things clear with her, and she should slowly come to terms with it and let go. I thought that maybe not long from now, she would hand me the divorce papers. My days slowly returned to normal, and work was getting back on track. However, one thing kept bothering me. After I regained my memory, Anna started reaching out to me more frequently. She said, "So you really had amnesia, huh?" I used to have doubts, but now I see it was true. She flashed that familiar seductive smile and asked, "Once you're divorced, what do you think about us?" I replied, "I'm not divorced yet." I corrected her. "We don't even have the divorce papers yet. What you're doing now is third-party behavior. I suggest you show some respect." Of course, I said this not because I still cared about Willow, but because I didn't want to rush into another relationship so soon. Besides, Anna, although she never was a third party, did get involved while my relationship with Willow was still unresolved. I appreciated her saving my life back then, but that was all. I said, "I only feel gratitude toward you. No feelings beyond that." She replied, "Isn't that a little too harsh?" Anna acted hurt, but then seemed to let it go. "I was just taking a shot in the dark. George, I already moved on, but seeing you struggling, I felt frustrated." I said, "I understand." I hugged her, but suddenly I noticed Willow walking toward us in the distance. I felt annoyed and was about to leave, but Willow suddenly rushed to the side and started gagging. Anna's expression immediately changed, her face turning sour. "Is Willow vomiting because she saw us hugging?" Willow replied, "And no, I'm not feeling well." Her voice sounded uncomfortable. Then, it seemed like something clicked in both Anna and I. We exchanged a look, and Anna's face darkened as she stared at Willow, who looked terribly unwell. She asked, "You're not?" Willow's eyes lit up as if she had just realized something. "The child." I shook my head violently. "No way." "Right." I closed my eyes, feeling lightheaded. Then I suddenly remembered when I had been at my lowest, contemplating suicide. It was because Willow told me she didn't want a child. If she got pregnant, she would have an abortion. Seeing this, Willow quickly pushed through her discomfort, approaching me and choking on her words. George. I was irritable, not wanting to face whether she was really pregnant, and feeling overwhelmed. I said, I don't want to see you anywhere, except for the divorce. Willow wiped her mouth, looking dejected, and took out another set of car keys. You don't like the off-roader? How about a sports car? I replied. I don't like that either. I gave her a cold stare and said, I don't like anything. As long as it's from you, I don't like it. Chapter 16. Willow's eyes turned a deep shade of red as she said, You don't like off-roaders. You don't like sports cars. What about a house? Shares? Everything I have, I can give to you. I have no other choice. She almost pleaded. No matter how much we argue, I don't want a divorce from you. I didn't want to be the subject of public gossip on the street, so I grabbed her arm and pulled her into the car. As the car drove off, her face grew even darker. I sighed and stiffly asked, Are you okay? Willow immediately straightened up and shook her head. I'm fine. Then she gently touched her stomach, a hopeful expression on her face. I was suddenly at a loss for words, unsure of what to say. After a moment, I calmed myself down, took a deep breath, and said to her, Willow, you really don't need to do this. I don't blame you. Aside from when you saved Makoto and it hurt me, I've thought things through. We simply aren't right for each other. Even though you didn't give me a sense of security, I lacked confidence myself, which made me paranoid and do things you hated. Honestly, I'm not entirely blameless. We've both made mistakes to get us to this point. As I said it, I found it a bit funny. Although I didn't want to see Willow, I didn't like the version of me back then either. I used to cling to her, thinking about nothing but our love, as if the whole world didn't matter. That version of me lacked charm. Even I didn't like that version of myself, let alone Willow. She said, I didn't not like you. Willow's voice was hoarse. I did feel impatient, but I never thought about divorcing you. I thought, no matter how much we argued, we would be together forever. I replied, but I don't want to live that way anymore. I shook my head and continued, Makoto was just the trigger, but the real issue is that we're not from the same world. I can't trust you, and you can't unconditionally accommodate me. Over time, we would just become tired, and new problems would arise. Willow, we're adults now. Let's stop being so childish. The black Cullinan drove off, and I insisted that Willow not drive me back. Standing downstairs, I watched her figure fade into the distance. I sighed. If there really is a child, my relationship with my family had always been distant. I wasn't particularly close to my parents. After they divorced, they both remarried and started new families. When I met Willow, I always dreamed of having a perfect, harmonious family, treating her like my lifeline. The harder I held on, the faster she slipped away. I had always wanted to have a child, so when she said that, I completely gave up on her. I thought, even if Willow didn't want the child, as long as she had it, I would raise the child on my own. That would be fine too, but she gave me no hope. I should have been as heartless as she was, but when I thought of it being my blood, I couldn't bring myself to be cruel. Today was a day off, so I went to the hospital for a brain checkup. When I was about to head home with the report in hand, I unexpectedly ran into a man I hadn't seen in a long time. George, what's that in your hand? Makoto suddenly appeared, and I was startled. Without thinking, I quickly shoved the brain scan report into my bag and said, What does it have to do with you? Why does it concern you? I was on guard because Makoto didn't seem like a normal person anymore. His face was haggard, his eyes vacant, and he hadn't even bothered to change his clothes, as though he had just gone through something major. He saw me avoiding eye contact and immediately lunged at me, trying to grab the report from my hand. In his frantic state, he wasn't a match for me, and he suddenly screamed, Do you know Willow's pregnant? She's carrying your child. What the hell? Why should I lose everything? And you let Willow get pregnant? I'm the one who's special. I'm Willow's childhood friend. You're just some latecomer. Why should you take her from me? What? Willow is really pregnant. I felt a complicated swirl of emotions, and even Makoto's outburst didn't register in my mind. He yelled, Why? I said, If you have an issue, go talk to Willow. It has nothing to do with me. I took a step back, not wanting to engage with his ramblings. This was something Willow should deal with. The old me was foolish, thinking that as long as I was the only man in her life, she would never change her mind. But for someone like her, changing her mind was far too easy. I didn't need to waste my time warning other men. It was just a waste of energy. He asked, Are you mocking me? Makoto suddenly laughed maniacally and took a step forward, glaring at me with intensity. Do you know she completely stopped cooperating with the Ito family? She's made me a laughing stock in the industry, and now you can't help me. Is that why you're mocking me? Chapter 17. I frowned and took a step back, about to turn and leave, but Makoto once again blocked my way. He said, It was you who told her everything, wasn't it? What are you talking about? I was confused. He continued, You told her I was deliberately making things difficult for you, that I was sowing discord, that I pushed you into the pool, and you told her, didn't you? I sneered. You did all those things, and now you're afraid someone will find out, he yelled. I knew it was you. With that, he suddenly screamed and lunged at me. Instinctively, I dodged, but I saw him pull out a knife from somewhere. He was aiming for my life. It seemed he had really been pushed to the brink, to do something so extreme. George! I heard a frantic shout. The expected pain never came. When I opened my eyes, I saw Willow standing in front of me, her body blocking the knife. I watched as the blade sank into her chest. She bled heavily, her face growing pale, but she still looked at me quietly, checking to see if I was okay. Her hand reached up, trying to touch my face, but in the end, it fell limply. Willow, I called her name, but she didn't hear me anymore. At the hospital, everything around me was covered in a pure white light. I followed the nurse, urgently pushing the stretcher, which was soaked in blood. My hands were also covered in it. I grasped Willow's hand, trembling, unable to tell whether it was my hand or hers that was shaking. But she squeezed my hand and softly asked, George, are you okay? I'm fine. Don't talk. Please don't talk. Every time she spoke, it drained her strength. I just wanted her to be okay. She lifted her hand again, wanting to touch my face. Don't cry, she whispered. It hurts. Don't say anything. Don't talk. You can't be hurt. I won't allow it. Do you hear me? Don't make me live with this guilt forever. Willow squeezed my hand with her last bit of strength, saying, if I'm not so lucky this time, you need to start a new life. Being a widower doesn't need a divorce. Suddenly, she gave a faint smile. At least we're still married. I gritted my teeth. Don't say such foolish things. I was more frantic than I had ever been, terrified that she might really die. All the emotions I had buried came flooding back, and I realized that my feelings for her had never really disappeared. They were just suppressed. I didn't want to be hurt again, so I tried to forget her, thinking that if time passed, maybe I could really forget her. But now, just as I remembered everything between us, she was fighting for her life to save me. I couldn't let go. I still wanted a divorce, but I wanted her to come out of that operating room safe and sound. Then we would sign the papers, each of us going our separate ways, living our own lives. The operating room light was still on. I sat outside on a chair, waiting. My hands were still covered in blood, all Willow's. Everything around me seemed so distant, as though it had nothing to do with me. It wasn't until Willow's mother arrived, frantically asking, how is Willow? What's her condition now? Only then did I raise my lifeless eyes to look at her and rasped, I'm sorry, we don't know yet. The doctors are doing everything they can. She rolled her eyes and nearly fainted. I thought she might blame me, but she didn't say a word. After calming down, she glanced at me and told me to stay where I was. I wasn't sure what she meant, but I obediently stayed there, waiting. Not long after, I saw my mother-in-law grab Makoto by the hair and angrily toss him towards me. She asked, it was him, wasn't it? I paused, then nodded. She pulled hard on his hair, slamming his head onto the ground, shouting, if anything happens to my daughter, I won't let you off the hook. Makoto protested. Aunt, it's all George's fault. It has nothing to do with me. I wanted to kill him. I would never harm Willow. My mother-in-law slapped him twice and said, you think I'll let you go just because you say that? He's my son-in-law, and if you harm him, I won't forgive you either. Hearing this, I stared at her, somewhat stunned. I had always thought she didn't like me, but I didn't expect her to say something like that. I even thought she would blame me. After all, the target of Makoto's violence had been me. Willow had taken the knife for me. Makoto wailed. Why, Aunt? You used to like me. What happened? She spat bitterly. That was when I was blind. My mother-in-law seethed with anger. I used to like you, watched you grow up, and thought I knew you well. But love can't be forced. My daughter doesn't like you, and I can't make her marry you. Even if I didn't think the person she chose was right for her. At least George has a good heart. It turns out Willow's judgment was better than mine. With deep sorrow, she continued, I know everything you've done. We haven't held it against you because of your grandfather, but I never thought you would go this far, doing something so vicious. If anything happens to Willow, you will never know peace in this life. With that, she made a call to Willow's father, who was rushing over as well. My mother-in-law even told him a few things. Don't let the Ito family have it easy. Tell them that this is all Makoto's doing. Chapter 18. Makoto was bawling on the ground, acting like a madman. Seeing this, my mother-in-law shook her head, sorrowfully saying, it's because you've been spoiled too much at home, never properly educated, that you've ended up like this. Makoto continued to scream and cause a scene. I didn't want to hear a single word they were saying. I kept my gaze fixed on the operating room door, praying that Willow would be okay. When the light in the operating room finally went out, my eyes immediately brightened, and I turned to the two people beside me, saying, quiet, the surgery's over. My mother-in-law immediately fell silent and motioned for the bodyguards to drag Makoto away. She glanced at me, but said nothing. We both understood without words. Our relationship wasn't exactly harmonious, it could only be described as mutual respect. The doctor walked out, and both of us hurried forward to ask, "How is she?" The doctor sighed and said, "She's undergoing stitching. The next few hours will depend on her will to survive." His words were polite, but both my mother-in-law and I understood the implication. After a long silence, Willow was moved to the VIP ward for observation. My mother-in-law and I walked in, both of us silent. Perhaps we just didn't have the strength to say anything. My mother-in-law's eyes were red, no longer carrying the same fierce attitude she had shown with Makoto. At the end of the day, she was just a mother worried about her daughter. I sat by Willow's bed, gazing at her closed eyes, unable to stop myself from whispering, "I'm sorry." My voice was rough, choked with emotion. My mother-in-law didn't respond. After a moment, she said, "It's not that I don't blame you, but I know this is Makoto's fault. I understand, Aunt," I said softly. "No matter what happens, I'll take good care of Willow." She sighed. "I know about the divorce plans. I didn't like you before, but I never made things difficult for you. I've even defended you in front of others. But George, confidence comes from within. If you can't even believe you're good enough, how can anyone else think you are?" My mother-in-law and Willow's father only had one daughter, and most of the time, they respected her personal choices. After Willow and I married, she had spoken to her parents, asking them not to interfere too much, and they had agreed. My mother-in-law had never spoken so frankly to me before. I nodded solemnly but didn't say anything. Soon after, Willow's father arrived. His face was grim as he told my mother-in-law that everything had been handled. Now, we only needed to wait for Willow to wake up. After keeping watch all night, my mother-in-law said, "You must be tired too. Go home and rest." I shook my head. "It's fine. I'm still young. You two should go back." My mother-in-law frowned, about to say something when suddenly my head spun, and everything went black. I collapsed into unconsciousness. When I woke up again, I found myself lying in the bed next to Willow. My mother-in-law, noticing I had regained consciousness, anxiously asked, "How do you feel? Is there anywhere uncomfortable?" I replied, "No." I shook my head. "How long did I sleep?" She said, "Not long. The doctor said you were just exhausted and needed rest." I nodded, but I could see her eyes were filled with a complicated expression. Curiously, I asked, "Is something wrong?" She sighed. "Willow is pregnant. Did you know?" My jaw clenched, and I instinctively pressed my lips together, unsure how to respond. I didn't want them to find out. If they knew Willow was carrying my child, they would insist on her having the baby. After all, they were in need of an heir. After our divorce, they would certainly try to fight me for custody of the child. With their wealth and power, I had no chance of winning. This family was the only one I had managed to keep close, and I couldn't let anything disrupt it. I stayed silent, and my mother-in-law seemed to sense something. After a long pause, she sighed again and said, "I don't want to get involved with your and Willow's relationship, but this child," she looked at me, adding, "The doctor said if Willow survives, the baby will be fine. Once she wakes up, she will want to keep the child, and we hope it grows up in a complete family." I frowned and replied, "Aunt, the most important thing right now is whether Willow will wake up." She sighed, "George, Willow may have wronged you, but she truly loves you. She's just been spoiled and doesn't know how to express herself." Before leaving, she patted my shoulder and said, "Don't worry, no matter what, the Liu family will protect you. That's what Willow would want most." I nodded. After she left, it was just me and Willow. I watched her tightly shut eyes, feeling a pang of pain, but then I remembered the child and felt a surge of anger. "Willow, I remember you saying you didn't want this baby. If you wake up and want an abortion, then I hope you never wake up." I said it, but she still didn't stir. I couldn't help but chuckle bitterly. "Isn't this your chance to make amends? Aren't you supposed to change? Lying here like this, are you just being lazy?" Chapter 19. I knew Willow couldn't hear me, but my mother-in-law's words had a huge impact on me. I needed someone to talk to, an outlet for my emotions. "Willow, since you don't like kids, once you wake up and have this one, I'll take care of the baby myself, but the child will still call you Mom. You are its biological mother. Even if we get a divorce, we can still coexist peacefully. Although, I won't be lonely for long. Perhaps before too long, your child will start calling someone else a mom." I said these words deliberately to provoke her. I wasn't planning on remarrying. Maybe I'd date, but marriage wasn't something I would consider again. I continued, "How do you think Anna is? She's liked me for so many years, and even saved my life. Maybe she'll be a great stepmom." Before I could finish, Willow's finger twitched slightly. It was just a small movement, and she didn't wake up. I felt a pang of disappointment. "Willow, I'm not joking. If you don't wake up soon, I'll really..." Before I could finish my sentence, I saw Willow's eyelid flutter. This time, I was sure it wasn't just a hallucination. "Doctor, I called out, excitement rushing through me as I quickly called Sophia over. Sophia, Willow's good friend, had been at the hospital the whole time since Willow's accident. She rushed over with Willow's attending physician. After checking, Sophia told me with a bit of excitement, she should wake up soon. Don't worry, I nodded. Thank you. Sophia was about to leave but turned back to me, saying, I'm sorry, brother-in-law. She had always called me Mr. Wong before. Sophia looked genuinely apologetic as she said, I used to think you weren't good enough for Willow, but this is between you two, and if Willow loves you, I shouldn't have pushed you so much. I responded, it's in the past. I said it without much emotion. To be honest, her apology didn't affect me much, since I didn't consider her much of a friend. To me, she was just an acquaintance. Sophia saw my indifferent response and didn't press further. After a few polite words, she left. I sat by Willow's bed, waiting for her to wake up. As midnight approached, sleepiness overtook me, and I leaned against the bed, holding her hand. The hospital was a little cold at night, and just as I was about to get up to find a blanket, I suddenly felt warmth on my shoulder. I jumped, quickly opening my eyes to see Willow covering me with a blanket. I asked, you're awake? I was overjoyed, gripping her hand tightly and about to call the doctor. While waiting for the doctor, Willow gently hugged me. She whispered in my ear, her voice raspy, don't let my child call someone else Mom. Her voice was muffled, and after just waking up, she was already worried about this. I felt a mix of emotions, both angry and amused, and pushed her away. You should get checked out first. Willow finally woke up. The Liu family was naturally overjoyed, and at the same time, the Ito family breathed a sigh of relief. Had Willow's condition taken a turn for the worse, they probably would have had to kill Makoto to atone for it. Of course, this was an exaggeration, but for the Ito family, a family with many heirs but a crumbling reputation, cutting off someone's financial resources was worse than killing their parents. They would do whatever it took to calm the Liu family down and get their forgiveness. Even though Willow had woken up, the relationship between the Ito and Liu families could never return to what it once was. It was completely shattered now. After everything that had happened, my relationship with Willow became more complicated. In the past, we argued a lot, but we never seriously thought about separating. Later, when she said she didn't want children and would have an abortion if she got pregnant, that's when I began to have suicidal thoughts. After she woke up, she took me to see a therapist for a full counseling session, trying to get to the root of the issue. But when she found out the reason behind my actions, the look of deep regret on her face was something I could never forget. She said, George, I never meant those things. How could I ever not want our child? She seemed to panic a bit, holding me tightly, and said, back then, when you said that, I thought if I got pregnant, I could finally stop worrying about Makoto. Even if we fought, I thought you were just being jealous, that you'd calm down once you were reassured. I knew I was wrong, but I always thought I had my reasons. I just wanted you to understand me, without realizing I should have understood your feelings. When you said that, I thought you saw the baby as a tool for competition, which made me so angry, but I never meant it. I understood what she was trying to say. I had said a lot of hurtful things too, but that one time, she really broke my heart. George, give me a chance, she said, her voice so low I could barely hear her. I can't live without you, and I can't live without this baby. Please, look at how I'm trying. If things still don't work out, then leave me. I won't blame you. George, I want to try again. I love you so much, and we were once so in love. If we just end it like this, I won't be able to accept it. Could I accept it? But I was honestly too afraid to try again. She was right. There had been many misunderstandings between us, but no matter how many misunderstandings there were, the pain I had suffered was real. She said, I've been hurt too, George. Willow cupped my face gently, saying, we're just two hedgehogs, but I'm willing to put my spikes away. Chapter 20. My mind was in turmoil, and I didn't give her an immediate answer. Willow wasn't in a hurry, though. She showed care and consideration, but always within reasonable limits, never overstepping. She had just woken up, and I told her not to worry about me too much, that she should focus on taking care of herself and the baby. But she always acted as if everything was fine, yet somehow knew every detail of my life. At first, I thought it was just because she was obsessed with giving the child a complete family. But later, I realized that even during our marriage, it wasn't just me who held on to things, she did too. After we got married, I never felt secure, which led me to do a lot of things that annoyed her. I said, I always thought our beginning wasn't so glorious. You ended up with me by accident, and there are so many excellent men out there. I was worried that once you saw them, you'd realize I'm nothing special. One day, I couldn't hold it in anymore and shared my feelings. Willow, our positions are too unequal. Back then, I couldn't adjust my mindset properly. So when I proposed the divorce, it wasn't just because of you. I had my own issues too. I didn't want to keep spiraling down. When I brought up the divorce, Willow only looked regretful. She said, George, I never thought about being with other men. I've liked you for a long time. I just never found the right moment. You thought that day was an accident, but have you ever thought about it? Even if I were drunk, I wouldn't let someone I didn't like be around me. I was shocked and interrupted her. What do you mean? You weren't drunk that day? I had always felt guilty about that moment. She was so drunk, barely able to recognize anyone, while I was tipsy, but my mind was still clear. Looking back, I realized I had taken advantage of her. But when she said this, the shadow in my heart lifted. I smiled and said, Willow, if you were sober, why didn't you say so earlier? I always thought I was the one taking advantage. Willow smiled apologetically. George, I was just in my early 20s back then. Didn't want to be rejected, so I had to try and test things that way. But I wouldn't do that now. I couldn't help but blame her a little. If you had said so earlier, I wouldn't have let my insecurities take over, and I wouldn't have done those stupid things. She placed my hand on her chest and said, yes, I was stupid too. I clearly liked you, but I always acted like I didn't care, just hoping to see you circle around me. I knew you didn't like Makoto, but still thought you were overreacting instead of addressing the issues with Grandpa. George, I did a lot wrong, and misunderstood a lot. If it weren't for your memory loss, I wouldn't have realized how over the top I was. We talked for hours that day, trying to work through everything from the past. Before I knew it, I had fallen asleep. At this point, Willow was more than 6 months pregnant, her belly round and swollen. I carefully lifted her from behind and gently laid her on the bed. Willow woke up and instinctively wrapped her arms around my neck. Thank you, she whispered softly. Willow gazed at me for a moment, then suddenly tilted her head up and kissed my lips. I didn't say anything. I just savored the moment. I don't know how long it lasted, but when she pulled away, my face was warm. I heard her hoarse voice in my ear. George, can we not divorce, please? I couldn't help but laugh. I had thought that, after such an intimate moment, she'd at least ask for something more in line with the mood. But no, she just didn't want a divorce. Seeing me laugh, Willow looked a bit upset but didn't dare say it outright. Instead, she lightly scratched me and said, don't laugh. Answer my question. I gradually stopped laughing, my face blank. Willow panicked a little and said, okay, no need to answer right now. Everything is fine the way it is. I understood her panic and gently sighed, stroking her cheek. Willow, let me think about it. Okay. Even though the misunderstandings between us had been cleared up, rebuilding trust wasn't going to be easy, especially for a couple like us, who had gone through so much. We hadn't crossed any lines, but the scars were still there. Rebuilding trust would take a long time. She focused on taking care of the baby, and for the child's sake, I was more lenient with Willow. She was really suffering. The pregnancy was taking a toll on her, but she was always strong. I still felt some sympathy. After all, it was my child. Soon enough, the baby was born, and time passed quickly. I had prepared myself mentally. If Willow was a good mother, I'd be happy. But if she didn't meet my expectations, I'd leave without hesitation. As expected, Willow never disappointed me. One day, after putting the baby to sleep, she turned to leave the nursery and saw me leaning against the door. Smiling at her, Willow walked over to me. What's up? I said. Nothing. It's just, I feel like I haven't seen that cold, distant side of you in a while. Willow sighed in relief, then smiled, wrapping her arms around my waist. That's all in the past. Can we not bring it up again? I asked. Why not bring it up? I grinned. But I still like the old, cold version of you. I'm sure you looked beautiful, changing the baby's diaper with that serious face. Willow knew I was teasing her, and with a straight face, she chased me into the bedroom. When she pounced on me, I heard her say, hubby, did I pass the test? I chuckled. You passed, but there's a retention period. She asked, how long is the retention period? I replied, a lifetime.